Hello students, today we have to start with how the demand curve is derived from price consumption curve. We already know the meaning of indifference curve and how the changes in income of the consumer and changes in price of the commodities that leads to changes in equilibrium. When consumer alter its equilibrium due to change in price of the commodities is called as the price effect. That means, when price of a product falls, consumers real income increases. As his real income increases, that reflect the purchasing power increases. Therefore, he tried to purchase more and more amount of that particular product, if the product is to be superior one as compared to the other bundle of commodities. Similarly, he can consume less if it is inferior. He can consume further less than the initial consumption if it is a given type of product. On the basis of that, the equilibrium of the changes, that is the price, due to the change in the price, it may be either forward bending or to the backward bending. That means, product price consumption curve, it may be a forward bending price consumption curve or it may be a backward bending price consumption curve, or if it is a both the commodities are normal, then it will move a 45-degree like angle. So, that is the shape of your price consumption curve. And what the price consumption curve reflect? That means, how the consumer change its consumption pattern due to the change in price of the commodities. And what the law of demand explain? The law of demand explains, other things being constant, when price of a commodity fall, consumer try to purchase more and more about that particular product. That means, the law of demand tells, other thing being constant, when price of a product falls, the demand for that product to be increases. That means, the consumption changes due to the change in price of the product. And it is not so that always the demand curve downward sloping, it may be upward sloping, right, it may be a flatter one, it may be the steeper one, depending upon the nature of the commodities. So, how we are able to deriving that particular demand curve from the price consumption curve, that is our topic today. That is the derivation of the demand from the indifference curve, or it is called the derivation of the demand curve from the price consumption curve. Now, before we proceed that one, let we assume consumers money income as given to you, let us say it is to be 100 rupees, right, and let us say price of a particular product we have to take into account, right. Let us say price of fish is to be taken as the 10 rupees per unit. That is the simple things we take into account. Let us say, considering this, suppose you have 100 rupees, how much you are satisfied? You know it is better way. Now, if you spend the entire income on the consumption of fish, how much you are able to consume? Now, we are able to consume max to max 10 unit of fish. Then how many unit of fish you are going to consume? Now, 10 units of fish. Now, we have to plot that particular concept with the help of a budget constraint, or is called the price line. Let us say here on horizontal axis we take into account the amount of the fish we demanded, and on the vertical axis we take into account the income of the consumer. Okay. Let us say consumer have 100 rupees of money income, we fix it, phrase it. How much you satisfied? No, O at that particular point, let us say it is a P, OP amount of satisfaction that we have to obtain, that is OP is the same thing as the 100 amount of the rupees, let us say depicting it as the 100 rupees, right. Now, if you spend the entire money on fish consumption, then how much unit you are able to consume? Not 10 unit. Let us we freeze that one at be here, this is the 10. That means, we have to take into account the price of the product to be 10 rupees. Got it? When price of the product is to be 10, we purchase, that means you have 100 rupees. If your price is to be 10, you are able to purchase the 10 unit of it. This is the quantity demanded, this is the price, right? And this is your income. This is the first instant. Now, if the price of fish to be fall, let us say the price falls to how much? This one, right? Then if the price falls to the 5 rupees, how much quantity you are going to consume? Not 20 units. Then you are going to be consume 20 units of it. That means, here is the price line. That means, you are able to consume 20 when price is to be 5 rupees. Here, that means the fish, you know, suppose you have 100 rupees, how much amount you have to satisfy, that is fixed. If I have in my pocket 100 rupees, it is okay. Now, I have to purchase 10 unit of fish, the same thing, because we have the same amount of the money of that particular 10 fish, that is the 10 into 10, that will be 100. Similarly, when the price fall, we have the 20 units of it, that means again we have the same amount of the money as the 100 rupees. Similarly, if the price is to be let us say increases, instead of your 5, let us say the 20, we are able to purchase 5 units of it, that means the price line to be here. That means, you can consuming only the 5 units of it. So, you just reflect the concepts. This is the price line or the budget constraint, because we take into account the two extreme situation, how much amount you have, and if the price is to be changes, then how the price line or the budget line is to be changes. That is one side of it. Okay. Now, that is not the consumption pattern, we are just explaining the term how that is the price line to be shifted when the price of the consumption, I mean the price of the product to be changes, as you know from our indifference curve analysis, right. We are putting the terms, let us say it is the L1, let us say it is the L1, L2 and L3. There are 3 points that reflect the 3 different situations of the prices of the commodities. But it is not so, he is not going to be consuming the entire amount. He may be consuming, he may spend all his earned income at these situations, but it is not so. Because if you draw this particular price line, the preference curves are given, that means indifference curve is given or the map is given, and each and every indifference curve, let us say for example, here the one indifference curve, that is the IC1, the tangent to the price line PP1 at the point E1. What it reflect? That means, he is actually going to be consume x1 unit of the product. At what price? At the price of the product is to be how much? The 20 rupees, because that is the terms of the 20 rupees concept. If the 20 rupees, you have to be able to consume the 5 units of it. But actually, you have to consuming OX1 at what price? The 20 rupees. And when the price falls to the 10 rupees, the indifference curve to be here, let us say the IC2, and it tangent at the point E2. And when for the price falls to the 5 rupees, then the indifference curves fall down further, this is the IC3 and it will consume at the point E3. That means, we take into account the consumption is to be x2, here is the consumption to be x3, right. So, initially the consumer at the point of the equilibrium E1, when the price line is to be PP1 or the PL1, as the price line is the PL1, indifference curve is to be IC1 that tangent it, and thereby the consumer is obtain the maximum amount of satisfaction, because of the dual condition are going to be satisfied at that particular point. What are the condition of equilibrium? Then the indifference curve tangent to the price line, and second point of the equilibrium condition is that at the point of the tangency indifference curve must be convex to the origin. So, ଦୁଇଟାଙ୍କ condition E1 point satisfy ହେଉଅଛି ସେଥିପାଇଁ the consumer is able to consume x1 unit of the product at what price, because we know at that situation price is to be 20 rupees. Okay. When price falls to the 10 rupees, when price falls to the 10 rupees, the price line is to be L2, that is the PL2, and when the price of the product falls from the 20 rupees to the 10 rupees, the consumer's purchasing power to be increases as the real income increases, thereby he try to consume more unit of the product, and when the purchasing power increases, price line PL1 shift from PL1 to PL2, that tangent the higher indifference curve IC2 at the point E2, right. So, the consumer is now consuming OX2 unit of the product, consumer is going to be consume OX2 unit of the product, but because that is the point of the equilibrium. Now, if price further falls to the 5 rupees, then the price line shifted from PL2 to PL3, now the price line need to be shifted, and that higher price line, higher budget line tangent to the higher indifference curve at the point E3. Now, the consumer is consume OX3 unit of the product. What type of product? It is the face, right. So, why I put the 100, 25, 10 and 20, because you know to understanding the concept that how the price line to be changes. Okay. Now, but considering those sort of equilibrium, we have to draw the demand curve. On horizontal axis right now, vertically below it, we take into account it is the face, that the quantity demanded, and on this axis we take into account the price. We take three different prices are there. Higher price is to be, this is the higher amount of price, that is the 20 rupees. This is the second price, this is the 10 rupees. This is the third price, this is the 5 rupees. They are the price lines we have to take into account at what price, how much unit of consumption is going to be consumed. At this point the consumer consume x1 unit of product, at this point the consumer is going to be consume x2 unit of the product, at this situation the consumer is going to be consume x3 unit of the product. Okay. Now, a particular point कौन था PL1 रे price केते अछि, we know the price at the situation is the PL1 जेतले price line अछि, price is to be 20. So, at the 20 how much the consumer consume? Next one unit of the product of face. So, the point, this is point we are to depicting as the point A. Similarly, when price line moves to the PL2, PL2 means this is the PL2 situation, the price is to be 10 rupees. When the price is PL2, that is the 10 rupees, the consumer is going to be consume x2 unit of the product. Now, where is the intersection part? The point of intersection is B. Similarly, when the price line is to be PL3, this price line PL3 depict the situation of your 5 rupees. Now, at the 5 rupees, the consumer is going to be consume x3 unit of the product. So, what is the combination? The point of it will be here C. Now, what you find? The point A, B and C. Now, when we joining this point A, B and C, we find a flatter demand curve. We find a flatter demand curve. As the fish is a normal commodities, therefore, the consumer try to consume the more unit of the fish when price falls. Now, the demand curve it will be downward sloping demand curve, and is a flatter demand curve that reflect the highly elastic demand curve, because fish is a better product, therefore, is a highly elastic demand curve. Mark rate कौन होची ना point of equilibrium कौन होची ना E1 E2 देखो तार right side रे तले रहउची, E2 पर E3 तार right side रे तले रहउची, सेति पई जेहेतु एटा right side को shift करूची, that reflect that this particular product जहाँ हमें x axis रे नेइची, that product it to be treated as a superior type of product. because when the price of that product fall, consumer try to consuming more unit of that particular product. जिते तार प्राइस कमी जाऊँगी आम कौन देखुचे 20 रुपीज थी प्राइस कमिला 10 रुपीज को 5 रुपीज है जो प्राइस आस्ते आस्ते कमी कमी जाऊँगी द कंज्यूमर ट्राई टू कंज्यूमिंग मोर एंड मोर ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर प्रोडक्ट right. So, due to that the demand curve is to be downward sloping demand curve here, and how we have to deriving it. Now, when we joining this point we know this is called the price consumption curve, this is called the price consumption curve, and from the price consumption curve we deriving this particular demand curve. Okay. This is the situation of a normal commodity. So, in the normal commodity case कौन होची ना demand curve टा downward sloping होची एवं flatter मध्य होची. Now, after knowing the same component that in the demand curve is the flatter demand curve for your product is to be treated as the normal product, that is called the phase. Now, we have to change our assumption. Instead of taking into account the phase is to be a normal commodity, now we take into account the phase to be a inferior commodity. जदि आम फिशटा को इनफीरियर कमोडिटी भाग डील करिबा देन तार डिमांड कर्व कौन हम द डिमांड कर्व डाउनवर्ड स्लोपिंग हम इनफीरियर कमोडिटी डिमांड कर्व डाउनवर्ड स्लोपिंग हम बट इट टू बी द स्टीपर डिमांड कर्व. नाउ हाउ द डिमांड कर्व इज डिराइव फॉर ए inferior type of product. Now, we have to deal with that. In the same way, we have to take in account the x axis and y axis. In horizontal axis, the x axis we take into account let us say the phase, but now the phase should not be treated as a normal type of commodities, rather it have to be treated as the inferior commodities. Okay. And we know on this axis we take into account the money income. That means amount of the money what you have, the consumer have it to be given in the vertical axis. Suppose same thing, same sort of figure we have to considering it. Now, initially you have 100 rupees, you got some sort of satisfaction. When the price is 20, this is the 20 situation, that is the P, that is the let us say the 20, you have to putting the term 20, you know, to understanding it. This is the L1, this is the P. So, P L1 when the price line is to be, this is the price is to be, that means you are going to be consuming 5 units of it, but the price is to be your 20. Now, here it is the L2, it is 10 and this is the L3, right. This is the, you have to, the price is to be, remember you have to, price is to be 5, that means you have to consuming 20, right. Here price is to be, when price falls, you know, initially take the situation of the 10, that means 100 rupees, if the price of the phase is at 10, 10 divided by 10 we have 10, this is the 10 unit of it. Similarly, when the prices fall from 10 to the 5, we are able to consuming 20, that means at OL3 how much amount you have, that the 20 unit of phase multiplied by the 5, that is the same thing as 100, same satisfaction level. Similarly, at this situation 5 into 20 also we got the 100. These are the 3 different situations are there. Now, suppose we take into account right now the phase is not a normal type of commodity, rather it will be treated as a inferior commodity. If it is the inferior commodity, let us start with the first equations, I mean the first equilibrium point. The consumer is equilibrium at the point, let us say here is equilibrium at the point E1, where the indifference curve tangent to the price line PL1 at the point E1. So, the consumer is equilibrium at this point, that means the consumer is going to be consume x1 unit of the product. The consumer is going to be consume x1 unit of the product at what price? The price is 20, because 100 divided by 5 we can get the 20. So, when the price is 20, how the price to be derived? The price can be derived, that is the OP divided by OL1, I mean the 100 divided by 5, that is to be 20 rupees. So, at the 20 rupees the consumer is consuming OX1, right. Similarly, when the price of the product it will fall right now, instead of the 20 rupees right now it is the 10 rupees. When it is so, the consumer is consuming, let us say OX2. Why it is so? Because when the price of the product will increases, I mean fall from the 20 to the 10, How is the price falls with the 10? That means OP divided by OL2. I mean the 100 divided by 10, it turns to be 10. At this situation you are going to be consuming OX2. So that means he is going to be consuming OX2 unit of the product at the price 10 rupees. Now if for the price falls means OP divided by OL3, I mean the 100 divided by 20, that means if the further fall means 5, he tried to consuming OX3 unit of the product, but that OX3 is to be here. How it to be obtained? Where the indifference curve IC3 tangent to the price line OL3 at the point E3. The consumer is consuming right now how much? Now OX3. But remember here the point of equilibriums. बर्तमान इक्विलिब्रियम पॉइंट गुड़ा कौन जाऊँ ना तार राइट रे टॉप को जाऊँ इनिशियली कौन तार राइट रो बिलो को जाऊला बर्तमान राइट रे टॉप को जाऊँ बिकॉज ऑफ द इनफीरियर टाइप ऑफ कमोडिटीज से चाहूँ अधिक किणव माने जितकी परिमाण में किणिया कथा किणुनी बट रादर डेफिनेटली इट विल इंक्रीजेस he purchases more of that particular product when price falls, but side by side say hold some amount of the money for the to purchase the other type of product, right. So each and every case is the same situation to be takes place, and when we joining the points E1, E2 and E3, what do you find? It is the price consumption curve. In the previous case the price consumption curve falls down way, but right now price consumption curve to be moved up way, and that reflect a downward sloping demand curve, but it will be a steeper one. Now we have to deriving the demand curve. Now consumption to be drop the perpendicular to know the consumption. This is the x1, drop the perpendicular further, this is x2, drop the perpendicular further, this is your x3. And we know that the three different prices are there. One price is 20, second price is to be 10, and third price is to be 5 rupees. Now initially at 20 rupees consuming OX1, that means OX1 at the 20 rupees, this is the point A, and OX2 at 10 rupees, this is the point B, and last one OX3 at the price 5. So OX3 at the price 5, that is the point C. When we joining the point A, B and C, what you find to be here? Now here the demand curve is a downward sloping, but the demand curve is a steeper. In the previous case we find the demand curve to be a flatter demand curve. Here we find the demand curve is a steeper demand curve. As it is steeper demand curve, that reflect that elasticity is to be the less than 1. In previous case what we find elasticity demand is to be a flatter demand curve, that means it is greater than 1. Here when there is a little bit change in the price of the product, the consumer try to consuming the less than the changes in the price of the commodities. That means the percentage change in the quantity is to be less than that of the percentage change in the price. Okay. So in case of your inferior type of product, the demand curve is to be downward sloping, but it to be a steeper demand curve. Now after knowing the term of your normal commodities, thereafter we have to move to the inferior one. Right now we have to move to the next type of product, that is called as the Giffen product. And Giffen product means it is the excess inferior product, and in case of your excess inferior product, the demand curve to be upward sloping demand curve. That means it is the exceptional cases of your law of demand. That means in case of your potato, in case of your excess inferior type of product, in that situation we know even the price falls, the consumer try to consuming less amount of it. Now how the demand curve is deriving if it is to be Giffen type of product from the indifference curve analysis, exactly from the price consumption curve, I will show you right now. Consider the same concept of your income, price of face and so on. This thing also will remain the same. We have to considering the terms for your easy purpose. For the easy you have to remember you have money income this much, initial price is this, when price increases what happen, when price falls what happen, you have to show it to be here, right. Considering that, let us start with the same type of equilibrium situations on horizontal axis and vertical axis is the money, here is to be FES, and this is the O, that is the P, and this is the OL1, and this is nothing but the 100, and when price falls it moves to the OL2, this is the L2, and for the price falls it moves to the L3, right. These are the three different price line or the budget line or the budget constraint. We take, this is the situation first, the consumer is equilibrium at the point, let us say E1. The consumer is equilibrium at the point E1 where the indifference curve IC1 tangent to the price line PL1 at the point E1. That means the consumer is consuming OX1 unit of the product. At what price? Now OX1 unit of product, the price is to be 20. How it is so? Because OP by OL1, same thing, OP 100, OL1 we know it is to be how much? This is called the 5, okay. Further it to be, let us say the 5 is there, thereafter it to be 10, this has to be 20. You have to dividing it on the basis of how much amount of the consumption it will takes place, right. We got this sort of things. Similarly, when further price falls, the consumer try to consuming less amount of it. Why? We have to take right now FES to be treated as an inferior type of product. It is not the inferior one, rather it is the given type of product right now. If it is a given type of product, that means it try to consuming less when price falls. Jeta the price fall kada, bartan kete consumption koruche, market here. Now the point of equilibrium is to be here. This is the IC2, the consumer is the equilibrium at the point E2, but right now market the point of X2 is to be left side of your X1. It will initially consuming OX1, right now it will be consuming OX2, less amount of the consumption will be takes place. Why? Because the product is the inferior one, right. That means consuming less unit of that product and hold more money in order to purchase any other type of product. Further, if the price further falls, the consumer try to consuming further less amount of it. That means when price falls, the consumer's real income increases, purchasing power increases, budget line shift from OL2 to OL3. Now the consumer is to be going to be consuming the further less unit of it, that is the IC3. The consumer is equilibrium at the point E3. Now how much is consuming? The consumer is going to be consuming OX3 unit of the product, OX3 which is to be less than that of OX2. So these are the three equilibrium points. Now if we extract those three equilibrium points, to deriving the demand curve, this is the quantity demanded of FES and this side is your price of the product. We know there are three points are there, this is X3, this is the point what is called as X2, this is the point what is called as X1 and the price is to be 20 rupees, high price, this is the medium price, the 10 rupees and for the low price this is the 5 rupees as you know. So at 20 rupees how much it will be purchased? OX1 is going to be purchased, OX1 is here 20 rupees. This is the point A and OX2 at the price 10, OX2 at the price 10, this is the point B and OX3 at the price 5, this is the point C. Now mark it, when you joining these 3 points A, B and C, what happened to the demand curve? The demand curve is to be upward sloping demand curve. In previous cases, we find the first one normal commodities, the demand curve is a downward sloping, the flatter one. But here it is a upward sloping demand curve, but in case of inferior type of commodities, again it is a downward sloping, but it is the steeper demand curve. So this is the way we have to deriving the demand curve in case of your normal commodities case, in case of your inferior commodities, in case of a given type of product. So these are the three ways we are to depicting the term how the demand curve is to be derived from the price consumption curve. So, that is all for today. In the coming class, we have to start with the other concept, the other applications of your indifference curve analysis. Thank you for today.